Welcome to Wizards of the Tower Roleplay, Campaign Tales, Episode 7. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower Roleplay, Campaign Tales, Episode 7. I'm Delaney.
And I'm Tom.
And in these episodes, we're talking about our campaign that we have going on in the Wildland, generically called the Never-Ending Winter.
The Never-Ending Winter, or the Endless Winter.
Or the Endless Winter.
Yep. So this episode starts out with some questions. And these are questions that our group has been mulling over all this time. Specifically, why do we keep seeing giants in our dreams? Why do we keep seeing the witch with the white and the black raven and the two wolves in our dreams? What connections these giants have to the never-ending winter? Why do we see ice giants and frost giants specifically in these dreams? And, why do the ravens, the black and the white raven, why did they attack us and try to claw our eyes out? What position Invernia has in this? And what part do we play?
Right. They're starting to put
saga
puzzles together, but they're still not sure of anything that's really going on.
Yeah, it's, of course, these campaigns a lot of times that Delaney puts together are mysteries, and you have to sort of unravel them and follow these threads of evidence, and you go around and you try to find different bits of information and little hints and stuff. And so this episode starts out with our characters wondering just exactly what we've got ourselves into.
So, when last the party encountered anybody, it was a bunch of hunters from Furuby Landsby.
Yeah, they were out
just to the west of the little village.
Yeah, Furuby Landsby sits at the mouth of a wide, deep east-west valley that if you follow it all the way to the east, as you're moving, it'd be Furuby Landsby here, the valley coming together like this, traveling east. If you follow it all the way to the east, you end up in Shadowcat lands, the Shadowcat clan lands. And they're the enemies of the Hollystaffs.
Right.
They raid each other. Specifically, the Shadowcat do a lot more raiding into the Hollystaffs than vice versa. But if you keep traveling east, that's where you go. But we have, that's where we're traveling. We're heading toward Furuby Landsby, and we're traveling with these hunters. And times are so tough that we actually end up sharing a lot of our food with them.
Yeah, they have a moose on their sled that they got, and
but that's got to feed the whole village, and that's no good.
Yeah, a village of 50 to 100 people.
Yeah,
it's not a very big village.
Yeah, they give us whatever sort of meager hospitality they can, but it's not much.
And they get to Furuby Landsby, and they meet the old wise woman of the village, Litu, and they're invited to kind of the clan gathering hut.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit bigger than most of the other huts. It's where people come together and where she's at. And she actually welcomes them and wants to know their purpose of travel in these foul times of bad weather. Because the weather's been very bad and cold and snow and blowing snow and wind and just frigid as can be.
Yeah, no people are traveling at this time except you have a specific purpose like hunting. Now, Furuby Landsby, describe it a little bit. It's not like Yarvik, right? Is it a wall?
Small. Okay. No, it's a small open little village, and it's the huts are kind of scattered.
Yeah.
And when the Shadowcat clan raids, they usually know, and they scatter, and they've got stuff hidden. But the Shadowcat clan, will take what they can, and they live meagerly.
Yeah, definitely a hard scramble existence back here.
And they might fight if they feel that they can defend themselves well enough against these raiding parties from the Shadowcat clan. And it's not all the time, but the Shadowcat clan does like to raid into it.
They do. And these people, they have meager amounts of food, and they've sent hunting parties out in all directions.
8 of them in all.
Yeah, to try to find food. And we come back with, a moose, and we come back with a hunting party. We have food, too. And so we share what we can, and we talk with Litu, the wise woman of the village, and we talk about our purpose, what we're trying to discover about these henges, And she just, she tells us that there are henges up the valley to the east in Shadowcat Land. And
it's got a great big huge thumb.
Yeah, and that's where we sort of head. You know, we're going to be heading east up the valley, and she says it's 5+ days or more, depending on how fast you travel.
On the snow and the weather.
It's going to take us to travel up the valley, to this place.
And there's a river that follows along this valley.
Yeah.
But it's frozen over, so it's it doesn't offer the party a whole lot to it, and it's a pretty rough river. It's going through mountains, so you imagine a river going through the mountains. It's like that. It's not smooth. It's not like you can walk on it and pull a sled on it all the way. But there is a path that goes on it, but it is of course covered.
Yeah. So we stay there. They offer us kind of meager food, broth, and some bread, and
basically it's a porridge that they get.
Yeah, and they help us update our map so we know where we're at. And then they ask us, as we're going to travel, they ask us to please keep an eye out for their hunting parties, and if so, guide them back into the village so they can find it, because they haven't been heard from a while and people are getting kind of hungry.
Of the 8 that they send out of 2, only 2 parties have come back, and both of them have come back with food, but the other 6 have not. So they're hoping that they're near and coming back, and they had enough supplies to last them a week or so, but they know well enough that they would return if they didn't have enough food, and if they get something to eat, they can also survive on that. But the hunting parties generally aren't going to stay out very long in the cold weather.
No, it's very cold now. It's we're talking Saskatchewan in the winter. I mean, this is bad. Very, very rough. And one of the things that comes up in conversation, of course, is that there are villages up that way, but they're Shadowcat villages. And one of the largest one is one called Talavakunux.
And Talabahamas. It's now that's the name that the Holly Staffers call it. It actually has a different name.
Yeah.
But that's what the Holly Staffers call it. And if you actually, I'll put the name of it and spell it, you can actually translate it into something.
Yeah, it's it's a village, but it's a Shadowcat village, and it's situated right there around where we need to go for the hinges. Very far away. So we partake of the hospitality, and we try not to eat too much. We try to contribute where we can. And that night, Frostwolf has a horrible dream, and in the dream, something happens to him.
Yeah, he sees the Shadow People again, and he's swinging his sword Hilari, and he cannot harm them. When the rest of the party wakes up, hearing him screaming, trying to wake the party from this fight, this invasion, they see nothing. They can't see a thing.
Yeah, he seems to think that we're all being under attack by a large group of shadowy figures who seem to attack spirits who attack from nowhere here and there. And he's hacking at them with his sword, and nothing's happening. We wake up and we don't see anything. And of course, the general consensus is this is connected to the time that he spent in the realm of death. That he may have come back, but maybe all of him didn't quite come back right. And so he's suffering after effects.
And the party decides at this point they really don't want him standing guard anymore.
Yeah, we can't trust him to stand guard. So he, even though he has very restless sleep, and he doesn't sleep very well, it's better off. We have enough people in our group that we can have 2 people on each shift at night, and so that he can get a full amount of sleep. Because it's kind of one of those things where we don't really seem to trust him that much, because he's one of our best fighters, but mentally he's being affected not only by his time spent in the realm of death, but he also seems to be targeted by shadowy undead figures, and he can't deal with it, and it's very difficult for him to handle this.
Later on, he reveals to the party some things, but we'll get into that when they happen.
Yeah.
They're given a bitter tea, which allows them to stay warmer for a few days.
Yeah. And it's kind of a magical tea.
Yeah. And Li Tu sees them off.
Yeah.
And they travel. Now, at this point, one of the party members, one of the players didn't get to make it. So they didn't make it into the village. So they actually will meet up later on, catch up to the party.
Yeah.
That was Bergen.
Yeah,
and
Bergen.
the village is told that they lost Bergen in the night. In the travel.
Yeah.
And Bergen, keep an eye out for her and send her on her way if they find her, or protect her and keep her there. And the party travels on their way.
Yeah. Keep in mind it's very easy to get separated, and Bergen got separated from us. In these blasts of, like a blizzard, a ground blizzard, essentially blowing through the trees, that reduces, visibility to near zero. And Bergen probably had to go off and relieve themselves, behind a tree or whatever, and we never caught up with Bergen again. So we basically let everybody in the village know that when our party member does show up, if they show up, to keep them there and wait for us, because we intend to come back down the valley once we investigate the henge. And we do barter with these folks for some snowshoes, because right now we're having a hard time traveling at a decent speed through the snow, and snowshoes help us quite a bit.
Now they can't get very many because the village can't spare that many, because they've got to use them for themselves for hunting and moving about.
Yeah, they do give us a couple of pairs, and Karnak and Maud take a pair, and so they're able to travel a little better. So
now the party, once they leave the little village of Furuby Landsby, they travel up the valley, following along the river, and not more than a day out, they come across another party of hunters with their sled piled high full of meat. Yeah,
and we're happy to tell them that they're going to be they are right now. They're being eagerly awaited in the village, and they should make them head back at all best speed. And they were, these hunters have been quite successful, and that they should travel back down and follow our tracks back to Furuby Landsby, so that they can. So there's a trail that they can follow back, and they won't get lost. And so this fulfills a little bit of our obligation to Litu, that we keep an eye out for hunters.
Right.
So we had this encounter. However, the day's not over yet, and as we keep traveling, we come across something. We see an unusual thing.
They come across a tomb that's been uncovered by an avalanche, a recent avalanche. It's probably been there for maybe a week or so.
Yeah. Now we're in this valley, deep, broad valley, and with snow-covered mountains, steep snow-covered mountains on either side. With avalanche chutes and rock falls and different kind of rock slides and snow slides all across. We see them all the time as the snow builds up and we travel. But this is unusual because we see a large avalanche that has uncovered a patch of bare rock, and there's a hole, a cave in the rock.
Right. The party decides they want to go check out this hole, cave, possibly to sleep in it. I'd be a little bit worried if I was him, because an avalanche should cover it, but maybe the avalanche is done and nothing else is going to fall. But they decide to go up and investigate, and they have their bear dig it out bigger, so they can get into it.
Yeah. Now, of course, at this time, we're not heeding the words of Gandalf in The Hobbit, where he says caves in the mountains are almost always, are almost always occupied, or they're not unoccupied for long. And so none of us takes this advice.
Young adventurers.
Yeah, young, intrepid adventurers. Sophie digs out the entrance, and we go down inside, and we find that it's like a crude chamber of worked stone. Yeah, that travels down.
It's a very
down into the mountain.
Crude chamber.
So we see where the snowslide has exposed a sheet of rock on the side of the valley, and it's exposed a cave in the rock.
Right. So they decide to go investigate, and they have their bear dig out a bigger hole.
Dig out a bigger hole so we can crawl in. And of course, we don't heed the advice of Gandalf in The Hobbit, where he says that caves in the mountains are seldom unoccupied. We're young, intrepid adventurers, and we all crawl down into the hole. And, there we find a passageway of kind of crude worked stone. Yeah. Leads down into the mountain.
Right. They go in deeper, and it's cold, but it's warmer than out there in the wind and the snow. And it's dry. Now, they do kind of have to drop in because the hole has been covered up part of the way by the avalanche.
Yeah, yeah. And
it's big enough that they can get in. Yeah. But their bear can't quite get in.
Yeah, it's not really what you would consider like a large passage. It's a narrow, sort of cramped, sort of passage that you have to kind of crouch in, and Sophie doesn't want to go in. She dug out the entrance so we could go in, but she doesn't want to go in. It just doesn't seem right to her or whatever.
Well, it's kind of hard for her because it does drop. And
yeah. We're worried that because we can climb down that she may not be able to climb back out, so she stays outside. We do see sort of faded old carvings on the stones as we go down, but we can't decipher them. They're worn.
They're old and worn.
Old, worn out, and the rock's in bad shape. But the passage, she just keeps going down, down deep into the mountain, and we follow along.
It's not that deep, but it's deep enough. And at the end of it, they find a crudely carved out chamber that has a sarcophagus. That the lid has been smashed open on it.
Yeah, and it's really it's a mysterious sarcophagus. We can't tell what era it's from, what time period it's from, or anything like that. It contains some old rotting clothing.
An old rusted sword.
An old rusted sword and some broken bits of, armor and pieces and stuff. The lid is cracked. It looks like someone's pried it open and dumped the lid on the floor and shattered.
But nothing's inside of it.
But nothing's inside.
Except for the old clothes and the old rusted sword that's worthless.
Yeah. So we don't detect anything bad about the site right now. So we decide to spend the night in there out of the weather because the weather's just absolutely atrocious. We build a little fire out of some scraps and we stay the night. And the next day we climb back up out of it and continue on up the valley.
Well, that night, Frostolf has another vision of the Shadow People.
He does. Yeah, he does. He has another where he's attacked again. And we're wondering if this is going to be a nightly occurrence.
Yeah.
He confesses to us that he
feels he's going insane.
He feels he's going insane. And we really feel for him. But on the other hand, it's kind of like, most of us are probably believing it. It's from his time spent in the realm of death. And, this is something that we really can't help him with right now. He needs healing of a sort that we can't give him.
Yeah. So they leave the cave and travel further up the valley.
Yeah.
And they come across, almost at night, in a clearing, they see a campfire burning off in the distance.
Yeah.
Well, the party decides to play it safe. Mm-hmm. They don't know if it's the hunters or what. Yeah. But they play it safe, and they see a smashed sled.
Yeah, this is the kind of sledge that the hunters had that we encountered before. They were dragging behind them that had all the pile of meat on it. And this is the same kind of sledge, but it's all broken and smashed. And we get this idea that something's not quite right. So we sneak up carefully through the snow, and we get closer to the fire. And through the firelight, we see these big hulking forms cooking food over the fire, and they look like big giant pigmen.
Well, they're bugbears.
They're bugbears, but to us, they look like big giant pigmen. And
woolly goblins, big giant woolly goblins.
And we have a sneaking suspicion that they're cooking something over the fire, and it's not something they hunt. Well, it's not something they scavenged or foraged. These are the hunters that they might have killed because they don't have any compunctions about eating people.
Nope, they like eating people.
Yeah.
So the party decides to attack they have a stressful situation, and their barbarian rages at this time and goes charging in.
Yeah.
And fight assumes.
Yeah, she's unable to control herself. She fails her save. It's very stressful. She attacks, and she charges in, and it turns into a fight. And it's a pretty tough fight. Bugbears are hard. They're knocking us back quite a bit, and we're fighting. But during the battle, something happens that changes the whole course of what's going on. And I'll let Delaney describe exactly what's happening.
Yeah, one of the big bugbears who's off in the back, he's taken enough damage, he or she, and pulls back and is all of a sudden jumped by this warrior that is a skeletal warrior. Mm-hmm. And just slices and dices and rips the thing apart and kills it.
Yeah.
And the party is victorious, and they see this warrior bend down, grab something from this bugbear leader, and starts walking towards them. And they start... Frostwolf is a little bit panicked.
Yeah, because it's an undead, and he's afraid of undead now. But the rest of us wisely figure, well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but
Yep.
we scatter.
And their barbarian manages to make their saving throw
Yes.
this one time.
Just one time, thankfully. Otherwise, we'd have been in deep doo-doo. And we let this Death Knight, glowing blue, bright glowing eyes, spectral knight, just
Drogar.
Draugr, essentially, walk right through our group and head on back down the valley.
It kind of looked at him menacingly, and
Yeah.
as long as they didn't do anything, it just walked through and left them be.
It had business of its own somewhere else. Now, what we surmise is that the tomb we were in the night before was its tomb, and that the bugbears had broken in and stolen something, and it wanted that something back. And it had tracked the bugbears this far, killed the big bugbear leader, took whatever it needed from its body, and was heading back down the valley toward its tomb.
Yep.
Now, later on, we're going to encounter this creature again by legend.
By word of
By
mouth.
word of mouth and legend, but we're just going to let it go because there's no way in the world we want to fight an undead Death Knight,
No.
especially at the level we're at. So it's a tragic, sad tale that we come to here because we find that the bugbears had indeed been eating the bodies of the hunters. And this turns
And all the meat that they had.
and all the meat that they had. And it's one of those situations where, sure, it was great to kill the bugbears, but it's very tragic because now these poor men and women are dead, and they are being eaten by the bugbears, and they lost their sledge, and they lost all the meat that they were carrying.
Yeah. So the party, so Furuby Landsby is now out to hunters,
Yeah.
and the meat that they were bringing back.
Yeah.
To-
Well,
to some of their better hunters.
exactly. And now the thing is, of course, is we can't turn back around and go back to Furuby Landsby because we have a mission up the valley towards the Standing Stones, and that's where we're going to continue heading.
And so Yrsa, what's left of them, does the ritual of
Yeah.
sending them back on their way to that way they don't come back as dead, and
Yeah.
they burn them the rest of the way.
Yeah,
so
we
they're
construct
not-
a pier and burn their bodies.
give them proper burial
Yeah.
with the sled and everything else that they
Yeah,
had.
with the rights.
So with that, we'll end Campaign Tales, Episode 7. Wizards of the Tower Roleplay. We hope all of your adventures are epic, and keep on roleplaying.
Thank you, folks.